Boris Johnson has announced a new Living with COVID strategy, taking the axe to remaining coronavirus rules in England nearly 2 years after the nation was upended by the virus. Most restrictions have already gone, of course, swept away at the end of January when Plan B rules requiring people to work from home ended, along with mandatory face masks and COVID passports for nightclubs and other venues. Now the Prime Minister wants us all to take personal responsibility for dealing with the virus, ending the legal requirement to self-isolate if you test positive. At the same time, universal free testing is set to be significantly scaled back. But the move has faced stiff opposition from Labour and some scientists who say it is simply too risky to declare victory over the virus now. The number of cases in the UK is still very high, and for the government, the key is the number of hospitalisations and deaths, which have been kept relatively low thanks to the UK's vaccination programme. Over the past week, the number of hospital admissions has dropped by 13% to 1,280 at the weekend, a quarter of the peak of the second wave last January. And on deaths, while there were still 128 reported on Saturday, that's a third of what we saw a few weeks ago and way down on the 1,300 daily number recorded in January 2021. Nevertheless, it's a move which is dividing opinion.
In the end, we have to live with COVID, and so we're going to have to live with a certain level of hospitalisations and deaths even. So
everybody has responsible decisions to make.
I don't believe it's led by science, more a goodwill factor. He's kowtowing to the far right of his party, who seems to be making the laws in this country now.
The government told us throughout this pandemic that they would follow the science. So what do the scientists think about this latest move?
My view on endemicity is that the government is beginning a control program, and a control program is done for all endemic infections, whether it's HIV and AIDS, whether it's tuberculosis, or whether it's influenza. So by moving to a control program, the government has decided that they will treat this as an endemic disease, which means it's prevalent in the population. It's in certain populations, maybe transmitting more in one group than another, and it could cause a surge, which is what influenza does. So the system is now moving to deal with this as an endemic disease. And, you know, the UK is very advanced in this thinking.
But this is also a political choice. Lifting all remaining restrictions will play well for Boris Johnson with a large section of his own Conservative MPs, many of whom are still weighing whether or not to push for a vote of no confidence over the Partygate affair. There's an economic rationale too. The last 2 years have crippled some sectors of the economy, especially London's hospitality and tourism industries, and getting back to normal could help boost the economy just as we hit a real cost of living crisis with people feeling the pinch. While it's understandable that many people, especially those vulnerable and older parts of society, will eye Boris Johnson's announcement with trepidation, it is increasingly accepted, even among political opponents of the government, that we do have to learn to live with COVID. Whether this new strategy is enough to save the Prime Minister, well, that's a different question altogether.